The Essequibo region, it's a swathe of land in South America, mostly jungle, lots of rivers, and just maybe a whole lot of oil. See, Essequibo is at the heart of a territorial spat between two countries, Guyana and Venezuela. And things are getting, shall we say, a little tense. Guyana, a small nation on South America's northern coast, currently controls the Essequibo. But Venezuela, Guyana's bigger, louder neighbor to the west, claims it as their own. They've been saying this for, well, centuries, and recently they've started to really turn up the volume. This isn't just about national pride or drawing lines on maps. This is about oil, black gold, the kind that can make or break economies. So how did we get here? The story of the Essequibo region is a tangled web of colonial ambitions, shifting borders, and enduring disputes. Buckle up, because it's history time. We're diving deep into the annals of colonial history to understand how this territorial hot potato came to be. Back in the days of colonialism, European powers weren't exactly known for their clear, respectful boundaries, especially when there was land to grab. The race for territory was fierce, and the rules were often made up on the fly. The Spanish Empire claimed the Essequibo region way back in the 16th century. They saw it as a valuable piece of land, rich in resources and strategically located. But by the 19th century, the British Empire, never ones to miss a land grab opportunity, had stuck their flag in the ground as well. The British were expanding their influence across the globe, and Essequibo was no exception. The Brits eventually incorporated Essequibo into British Guyana, which later gained independence as Guyana. This move was part of a broader strategy to consolidate their holdings in the region. Venezuela, however, never really let go of their claim. They viewed the British actions as an overreach, an unjust seizure of territory that rightfully belonged to them. They saw the whole thing as a colonial hangover, a case of one empire stealing from another. For Venezuela, the issue was not just about land, but about national pride and historical justice. And they might have had a point. The colonial era was rife with such disputes, where the lines on the map were often drawn with little regard for the people living there. But for decades, the dispute simmered in the background, a low hum in the symphony of international relations. It was a complex issue, entangled with the legacies of colonialism and the aspirations of modern nations. Then came 2023. Venezuela, under the leadership of President Nicolas Maduro, decided it was time to turn up the heat. In December of that year, they held a referendum, a vote by the people. The question on the ballot: should Venezuela annex the Essequibo region? The answer, according to the Venezuelan government, was a resounding yes. Of course, it wasn't quite that simple. International observers raised eyebrows at the referendum, questioning the turnout and the fairness of the whole thing. But Maduro, facing domestic troubles and perhaps sensing an opportunity, doubled down. He declared Essequibo part of Venezuela, appointed a governor for the region, and started beefing up the military presence along the border. The international community, never one to ignore a potential land grab, took notice. The United States, already at odds with Venezuela over a host of issues, slapped sanctions on the Maduro government. Other countries expressed concern, urging dialogue and a peaceful resolution. Guyana, understandably a little freaked out by their bigger neighbors' muscle flexing, appealed for international support. They argued that Venezuela's actions violated international law and threatened peace in the region. The dispute, once a regional squabble, was threatening to boil over into a full-blown international crisis. Section 5, black gold and greenbacks. But here's the thing, this dispute isn't just about history or territorial integrity, it's about something much, much shinier: oil. In 2015, a massive oil discovery off Guyana's coast changed everything. Estimates suggested billions of barrels of the good stuff lay beneath the ocean floor, just waiting to be pumped up and turned into sweet, sweet cash. Suddenly, Guyana, a country that had long been seen as a sleepy backwater, was on the map. International oil companies, smelling the sweet scent of profit, came knocking. ExxonMobil, Hess, even the China National Corporation, all invested heavily in developing Guyana's newfound oil wealth. This wasn't just a game changer, it was a whole new game. Section 6. Guyana's boom, Venezuela's bust. The oil discovery triggered an economic boom in Guyana. GDP growth soared, poverty rates plummeted, and the country found itself swimming in newfound wealth. The streets of Georgetown, the capital, were bustling with new businesses, and the skyline was dotted with cranes erecting modern buildings. The influx of oil revenue transformed the nation almost overnight. Luxury homes and new developments sprang up, and marketplaces were filled with people enjoying their improved standard of living. It was a Cinderella story, a rags-to-riches tale that had the potential to transform Guyana into a major player on the world stage. The pristine landscapes of Guyana were now juxtaposed with bustling city scenes, showcasing a nation on the rise. The newfound wealth brought hope and optimism to the people, who were eager to embrace their country's bright future. Infrastructure projects were underway, aiming to modernize the country and improve the quality of life for its citizens. Roads, schools, and hospitals were being built, and the government was investing in sustainable development to ensure long-term prosperity. Venezuela, on the other hand, was facing a very different reality. Years of economic mismanagement, corruption, and US sanctions had crippled their economy. Hyperinflation was rampant, basic goods were scarce, and millions of Venezuelans had fled the country in search of a better life. The once thriving nation was now a shadow of its former self. People lined up for hours to buy basic goods, and supermarket shelves were often empty. The situation was dire, and the future looked bleak for many Venezuelans. The humanitarian crisis forced millions to leave their homes, seeking refuge in neighboring countries. The exodus of Venezuelans was one of the largest in recent history, highlighting the severity of the situation. The contrast couldn't be starker. Guyana, the little guy, was on the rise, fueled by black gold. Venezuela, once an oil giant, was mired in crisis, desperate for a win. Guyana's ports were busy with oil tankers, and oil workers celebrated their newfound prosperity. The country was on a path to becoming a significant player in the global oil market. Meanwhile, Venezuela's oil rigs lay abandoned, and protests filled the streets as people demanded change. The nation was in desperate need of a turnaround, but the road to recovery seemed long and uncertain. Section 7. David versus maybe Goliath. So, how does this all play out? The tension between Venezuela and Guyana is palpable, and the stakes are high. Both nations have been preparing for any eventuality, but their approaches are vastly different. Well, on paper, Venezuela has the military advantage. They have more troops, more tanks, more planes. Their military might is formidable, and they have invested heavily in their defense capabilities. But here's the catch: military strength isn't everything. History has shown us that sheer numbers and firepower don't always guarantee victory. Guyana, while outgunned, isn't completely defenseless. They have a smaller but highly motivated and well-trained force. They've been quietly bolstering their defenses, building fortifications and preparing for any potential threats. Moreover, they are not alone. Guyana has been receiving support from other countries, including the United States, which has provided military advisors and conducted joint exercises. Plus, there's the whole international community thing. The global stage is watching, and any aggressive moves would draw significant attention. A full-blown military conflict between Venezuela and Guyana is unlikely to be met with a shrug and a boys will be boys attitude. The Organization of American States, the United Nations, and other international bodies would likely intervene to prevent escalation. Even regional powers like Brazil, which has a vested interest in maintaining stability in South America, would likely step in to prevent a war. Diplomatic efforts would be ramped up to de-escalate the situation. So, while Venezuela might be the bigger kid on the block with more resources and military power, they're not exactly free to throw their weight around without consequences. The international community is poised to act, ensuring that any conflict is swiftly addressed and peace is maintained. Section 8. Playing politics with patriotism. Now let's talk about Maduro. The man knows how to play the political game. Facing internal dissent, a flailing economy, and upcoming elections, he needed a win. And what better way to rally the troops, both literally and figuratively, than by waving the flag of nationalism? The Essequibo dispute, long dormant, provided the perfect opportunity. By resurrecting the claim and taking a hard line, Maduro could paint himself as the defender of Venezuela's rightful territory, the strong man standing up to foreign aggression. It's a tactic as old as time, and it often works, at least in the short term. Section 9. Can't we all just get along? So, what's the solution? Well, a full-blown war would be disastrous for everyone involved. Guyana's newfound prosperity would evaporate, Venezuela would face even harsher international condemnation, and the region would be plunged into chaos. Not exactly a win-win situation. The only realistic path forward is through diplomacy. Both sides need to come to the negotiating table, willing to listen, compromise, and find a solution that respects international law and addresses the concerns of both countries. It's a long shot, sure, but it's the only shot they've got. Because the alternative, a descent into conflict and chaos, is a price neither country can afford to pay.